Hello, America. Happy Friday. Welcome to the latest edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, as always, hosting here in Washington, D.C. And tonight, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to jump off that breaking news train that we've been on for the last month. Chronically, it's been so much big news, and I want to go back to a deep dive that we started a month ago. The issue of agro-terrorism. We are closer to an enemy-induced famine than most Americans realized. The Trump administration realized it. Since our last special at the end of June, the Trump administration rolled out one of the most extraordinary agro-terrorism and food security plans the country has ever seen. It's a start. It's a down payment on a much larger investment that we're going to have to make sure that our food supply, our water supply is protected from enemies like China. But we got a good start, and some of the issues that we brought to light last month when we had that whistleblowing Chinese doctor and others on the show, they're getting addressed now, and I feel really lucky about that. And tonight I'm going to be rejoined by a guy. Every time I work with him, good things happen. He is another great host on this Real America's Voice network. He has the 3 o'clock show. I'm lucky to sometimes be on there. Steve Gruber's joining us tonight. Steve, so much happened in the last 3 weeks since we did the special. Real action, concrete things. I don't think we could have expected that much action so quickly.
Well, you mentioned something off the top, all this breaking news for a month or 2 or 3, and you lose track of other very important issues, this being one of them, of course. Agricultural terrorism, and China with its fingers deep into universities across this country, into the National Institutes of Health. A lot of concerns out there, and as you mentioned, John, a lot of it addressed in the big, beautiful bill. Because look, if America's agricultural and food supply systems get attacked by China by way of a pathogen, like we saw happen in Michigan when University of Michigan students were bringing in fungus that could damage our corn, our wheat, our beans, well, the ramifications could be global, because some of the first people that would pay the price, if we had a failed crop in America, it wouldn't necessarily be America that pays the price first. It could be sub-Saharan Africa. They rely heavily on the exports of wheat and other grains that we put out of America. So protecting the American food supply is not just an American issue, it's a global issue, John.
Yeah, we are the breadbasket for so much of the rest of the world, not only our own people. We're a gracious farming. Where the Trump administration is going to go, they're going to start making it harder for foreign enemies to buy land. They're cracking down on foreign scientists coming in and getting access to our bio technology. Still a lot more to be done. Congress will be an important part of codifying this long term. What are the big things on your checklist right now?
Well, interestingly enough, our Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, when she was still governor of South Dakota, was one of the first to step up and say, look, we cannot have China owning agricultural ground in America, and certainly not near military bases or other sensitive facilities. She was one of the first to step up. Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida recently following suit. I think that's one of the things that people hear about all the time. Why does China own all this land in America? Why do they have access to all these different places? Plus, the scientists at National Institutes of Health, the students that are working in studying pathogens here in the United States and then taking that information back to China. These are all areas of concern, and I think the big, beautiful bill put us on the right path.
It sure did, and we're lucky to kick off tonight's show with someone who came from the farm industry and today presides over it. All right, joining us now, the Cabinet Secretary who quarterbacked that historic counteroffensive against agro-terrorism threats in America, the United States Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins. Madam Secretary, great to have you on the show.
Good morning. Great to be here with you guys. Thanks so much.
It's a great honor to have you on. This is an extraordinary plan that you and the other cabinet secretaries put together. How serious was the threat? When you get in office, what did you learn about the agro-terrorism threat, and how much did it surprise you?
Well, there were a lot of things that were pretty surprising, John. The first thing was how just overall, how a lot of people, most people, didn't really consider that farm security and food security is paramount to national security. I was sort of a little stunned. I mean, you've kind of seen the narrative, and I think you've even talked about, maybe you were even one of the first ones to talk about, John, on this show, was the China, buying up all of our farmland around military bases. And then, of course, we had Doge come in, which was amazing and help us think through all these contracts and researchers the U.S. government didn't even really know in a lot of ways who they were, contracting with and spending money with. And so President Trump had raised the alarm on that. But no one had really thought about it from a full kind of 360-degree view before. And so when I started digging in and, we had some bioterrorism over here. We had some mineral, supply chain issues over there. The fact that the Secretary of Ag, no matter who it is, was not on CFIUS, which is the Treasury Committee that approves the foreign purchase of business and land, et cetera. I mean, it was sort of one thing after another. And kind of with my team, I thought, why isn't anyone talking about this? Like, this is actually really significant threat to our national security and to America. So that's where it all came from. Started talking to Attorney General Bondi. Of course, she's got the DOJ side of things, talking to Pete Hegseth on the defense of the homeland. Obviously, I'm talking to Kristi Noem. So I said, would you guys partner with me on this? I mean, I think this is one of the magic things of President Trump's cabinet is we all know and love each other and we all work so closely together. And all of them said, Brooke, we are all in. Just tell us, what you want to do and how you want to do it. So that's kind of how it started. Then thinking about, and John, we've worked together for so long, that the states are the guardians at the gate. I've always believed that, and ensuring that the governors have the tools that they need. So then they came in as really important partners in this. And of course, so many champions on the Hill on the issue too. So that's really how it all came together.
Extraordinary.
Madam Secretary, let me ask you this. Obviously, the Chinese students have infiltrated American universities across the country. And when you hear about the University of Michigan having students trying to sneak in different pathogens, fungus in this case, that could potentially destroy half the corn crop, rice, wheat, everything else, how do you go ahead and control? You've got thousands, literally tens of thousands of Chinese students working in agricultural studies across this country, whether it's Michigan State, the University of Michigan, Texas A&M. Pick your university that does serious agricultural studies, and you have a big problem to try to corral and put a leash on. How do you do that?
Well, there is no doubt. And really, we're just peeling the layers of the onion back right now. I mean, as part of the announcement, when we announced this big plan a couple of weeks ago, we canceled fired 70 different contractors that were from foreign nations that are adversarial, including China, but including Iran and some other nations as well. This is unbelievable that U.S. taxpayer dollars for so many years went to fund people and contracts. And let me be clear, other than what we found with those students in Michigan, we have not seen anything else nefarious. But the fact that we even have opened up these opportunities for citizens of foreign adversarial nations to be part of our university systems, to be part of our research system, that's what we have to get our arms around. And that's what President Trump has tasked us with. I think that's what the people of America voted on November 5th of last year when they put him back into the White House, was to ensure that we're keeping America and Americans safe. So we're on it. We've been canceling contracts, firing people, ensuring that we have only those with America's best interests at heart working. But this is not going to happen overnight. That's why I think this plan was so important. It puts us on a path to ensure that we are being absolutely 100% Johnny on the spot to make sure that we're doing what we need to protect America.
One of my favorite parts of the press conference that you did with the cabinet secretaries and the governors was educating the American public that farms are increasingly at risk of cybersecurity attacks. We know the Dole plant that got struck in 2023, but as farms use more smart technology, they become more and more vulnerable to cyber hackers. How big is the threat? And tell us about the great solutions you've put in place.
Well, the cybersecurity threats are real, and we certainly know that. I think we all probably have our own stories, of something getting hacked, or my old organization, America First Policy, certainly faced it. Now as a cabinet secretary, the team is now have heightened awareness. I have had some personal things happen as well. I mean, I think it's certainly it's affected every American. But when you think about, for our farmers who are producing our food supply, what they are facing every day, and as we are moving toward, as we should, more automation, more AI, understanding, you know, the technology is incredible. Silicon Valley and a lot of those geniuses out there have turned their efforts to agriculture and how we can basically better help support our farmers and our ranchers. But to your point, that opens up a whole new level of potential attacks from the bad guys. So we have put in place, again, more with Kristi Noem and Department of Homeland Security. She's got a great cybersecurity unit. Defense does as well. Across the government, I'm even here at the White House. We're spending a lot of time on that. The team's here. But ensuring that, again, agriculture is at the table, that those who are working on this realize that that is paramount to everything we're doing to protecting America, to making sure that our farmers and our ranchers and certainly our agriculture is protected in every way that we can, and putting in place those procedures and those policies and those plans to protect from the cyber part of this as well. We had a 7-point plan. I know that we announced this, John, what you're referring to, the cyber piece of that was a really important piece that a lot of people have not focused on, but we are hyper focused on that as well.
Yeah, important.
I'd like to stay with cyber. I'm going to stay with cybersecurity just for a bit longer at the universities, because with all of these students, they have access to all of this research and so forth, no matter which university it is. And I have to sit here and wonder, how do you protect each laptop, each bit? I mean, obviously, China has no qualms about stealing intellectual property or research for their own benefit and to the detriment of our country. It seems that that's a pretty big task as well. All those individual researchers, all those students that have links back to Beijing, that's a big task too, isn't it?
It's a really, really big task. And listen, the research by our land-grant universities is second to none. I mean, the reason that America does feed and fuel and provide fiber, not just for our own country, but for the world. And of course, now another conversation for another time, John and Steve, but what the president has done realigning the world economy around American products with the tariff renegotiations. I mean, none of that is possible without the president leading the way and opening up these markets. And a lot of that is fueled and powered by this incredible research from all of these great American universities. But the president has talked nonstop since I was with him in the first term, since he first came down the escalator, of these real threats that are happening from people that are coming into our country, coming into our universities, you know, being our students on the taxpayer dime, and then taking that, whatever it may be, the intellectual property, the whatever it may be, taking those back home and then potentially using them against us. These are real threats. And I think that just beginning to understand that, again, especially from my lane on the agriculture side in the last 6 months and previous to that, but now building on it to ensure that we're protecting is of key importance here.
Madam Secretary, before we let you go, you've talked a lot about the importance of making the farm economy more resilient, and there have been some major, major victories. Just in the last month, the big, beautiful bill and the changes to the estate tax allows families to hand down to another generation their farm without having to pay all their taxes. And then these big deals, Japan, you mentioned, in Indonesia, these are massive markets that have been closed off. How much do you think the farm economy gets an injection of resilience through these deals?
I think that we truly are moving toward a golden age for agriculture. And I'll never forget, John, I was voted and approved by the Senate on February 13th earlier this year, on my way to getting sworn in by Justice Clarence Thomas, which of course was incredible. And in that 5-minute, the drive from the Capitol to the Supreme Court, my phone rings and it's President Trump. Of course, he was watching. You know, he's everywhere and knows everything seemingly. And he called and he said, "You tell those farmers that we are about to embark," and he used the words, "on a golden age of unprecedented prosperity," and understanding that they have been suffering for so long. We've lost so many family farms over the last 4 or 5 years. The Joe Biden years, an increase in a 30% cost of inputs for our farmers. We went from a trade surplus under Trump 1 to a $50 billion trade deficit for our ag community under Biden. I mean, these are real challenges. These farmers are having to choose between farming houses, basically, right, selling their farms for development, or trying to keep them. And whether it's President Trump realignment on tariffs, whether it is our work to bring inflation down, the cost of inputs down, but the big, beautiful bill, I'm so happy, John, that you brought that up. I don't know, it was such a big and such a beautiful bill. I don't know that a lot of people realize how good it was for our farmers and ranchers. And again, talking about national security, ensuring that they have the sustainable and resilient ability to pass these farms down to their children and their children's children. But what normally would be in a farm bill, which the Biden team could not get passed in the last administration, a lot of that got passed in the bill, whether it's the inheritance tax, the death tax basically now being taken off of 2 million of our family farms, a $10 billion tax cut for our farmers and our ranchers, reference prices, which is probably, most people don't understand what that means, but for our row croppers especially, they're the ones who've been the most hurt over the last 4 years under the Biden team. All of that, 100% deductions, expense deductions, 45Z for our corn farmers. I mean, it is one win after another. And that's thanks. I mean, I've been sort of, yelling it from the rooftop, or anyone that will listen to me. But honestly, it's President Trump. His heart, his focus, his passion for the American people. But from my world, especially for the American farmer, there's nothing that's been like this, at least in my lifetime, and perhaps back to Abraham Lincoln, who started the U.S. Department of Agriculture as the People's Department, and to support our farmers and ranchers. I don't know that there will have been a president since Abraham Lincoln, and before that, since George Washington, that has been so focused on prosperity and making sure that every American has a real shot at the American dream, but making sure that our farmers and ranchers have what they need to feed our country and to feed the world.
I was at a farmer's market, and the farmer said to me, the last 6 months have been the most consequential time in farming and agriculture history in generations. You've been the quarterback of that. It's a great honor to have you on the show today. Thanks so much,
John.
Secretary.
Thank you. That's the greatest blessing to hear that. So thank you so much. And y'all do such great work. I'd love to come back on anytime. Thank y'all for having me.
Let's do it. Great honor to have you on. Secretary Rollins, thanks so much for joining us today. Folks, Steve and I have a lot more for you ahead right after these messages.
Hello, friends. As we celebrate America's birthday, it's a great time to reflect on the facts. And here's one that really matters. The freedoms that we enjoy today didn't happen by accident. They were built on the foundation of faith, family, hard work, and individual liberty. But those values don't protect themselves. They need people like you and me to stand up for them. And that's why I want to encourage you to join AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. AMAC is working every day to defend the principles that made this country great. And right now, in honor of Independence Day, you can get 5 full years of AMAC membership for just $35. It's an incredible opportunity to stay informed with their magazine, access exclusive discounts, free resources, and most importantly, stand with millions of other Americans who believe in protecting this nation's future. So go to amac.us/justnews right now and join. This July, give America the gift of more patriots standing up for her.
And welcome back to this special edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm Steve Gruber, co-hosting tonight with Just the News editor-in-chief John Solomon. This is part 2 of our deep dive into the threat of agricultural terrorism here in America. We know the Trump administration is taking a close look at the issue, and joining us just a short while ago to discuss was Deputy Assistant to the President, as well as Senior Director for Counterterrorism at the National Security Council, Dr. Seb Gorka. We have to focus on what's happening with China. We see these students coming in with pathogens to the University of Michigan and elsewhere. It could threaten as much as half of the wheat, corn, rice. It's a huge concern. What is being done about it at the White House?
Well, we can actually tell you that we understood this threat and took it very, very seriously 8 years ago. If you go back in time to the first Trump administration that I was honored to serve in as well, you just have to go online and you can find a court case that we specifically declassified all the relevant documents for, of a Chinese national found stealing U.S. corn in the middle of a cornfield in the Midwest. Why? Because of the blight resistance that we have managed to achieve with our crops here in the United States. So this isn't just terrorism. This is espionage coming out of the biggest communist nation in the world today. The good news is President Trump takes it very, very seriously, and with the likes of Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe running the CIA, Pam Bondi as AG, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino of the FBI. We will not allow this to occur, and we will make sure that the national security of America includes our agriculture as well.
Yeah, it's so important, and I know the Ag Secretary, Brooke Rollins, has done a lot. I want to turn to what happened in the 4 years after the vigilance.
Sorry.
Please.
I got to say, John, God bless you for mentioning her, because she is part of this team, very forward-leaning as well, so good for you.
That's a great team, and of course you too. I mean, you have made this a priority for a long time. We used to talk about it on your radio show and your TV show. I want to turn to something that happened. So there's the vigilance of the first Trump administration, then there's 4 years of Joe Biden, where it looks like more than 1,000 Chinese scientists got into the federal government at the NIH, at FDA, and at USDA, and they all seem to be interested in pathogens and bioterrorism and bio capabilities. Was this a concerted effort by China to try to embed and find our vulnerabilities and learn our strengths?
So let me answer it for you in a very personal way, John. You know I'm a counterterrorism guy, and I've spent a quarter of a century doing this, and now I've got my dream job running counterterrorism for the most historic president of the modern age. However, and I'm going to say this on your show, even as a CT guy who has to deal with the likes of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, once you get the clearances, your TSSCI, once you're reading the President's daily briefing, you understand instantly that we will deal with all the terrorists. We will deal with Russia, with Iran, with little Kim in North Korea. But there is one strategic level threat we face as a peer or near peer competitor, and that is communist China. Period. End of story. And if you want to know the threat, you don't even need our clearances. You go online and you read the book by two former senior PLA colonels, Unrestricted Warfare. You look at what the One Belt, One Road initiative is doing. To be at war with us right now, you don't need bombs and bullets to be at war with America. You can do it with espionage, with information warfare, with economic warfare. Why is the president so driven when it comes to rare earth minerals? Because China is trying to scoop them up everywhere and make it impossible for us to maintain our security, whether it's from operating your tablet at home or the incredible weapons we recently used in Operation Midnight Hammer. All of those require rare earth minerals, and we don't want them in the hands of a communist dictatorship.
So well said.
Doctor, one of the things that is clear and has been in the front headlines recently is the ownership of farmland in America. And it's not just farmland, it's farmland that is strategically located near military bases and elsewhere. It is of great concern to many people. Some states have now outlawed China owning farmland in America. Is it time for the federal government to make that same move to make sure that Chinese nationals don't have access to our farm fields of corn, wheat, rice, whatever it may be, and easy access to the heartland of America? Should we stop this?
Food security is national security. And let's be very clear, this isn't just about land that is being used to grow crops to feed Americans. It's about suspicious purchases of huge tracts of land close to sensitive sites, whether it's military sites, whether it's signals intelligence sites, whether it's nuclear power stations. These are all national security issues. And remember, we don't have to go back very far in time when a certain man in the building behind me, called Joe Biden, the alleged president, allowed a Chinese surveillance balloon to traverse the whole of the United States, including over very sensitive sites. That is a national security threat. So you're absolutely right. We take this super seriously, and the real president right now understands the threat from China, whether it's economic, agriculture, espionage, or anything else.
Yeah, and in the last few months, you guys have taken the most sweeping actions of any president, any administration in history to start to address this. Now, executive orders and executive actions can always be reversed by someone who doesn't have the vigilance of this administration. What can Congress do to codify and make sure that future administrations can't drop the ball, look the other way, turn a blind eye, and put us at risk? For instance, should farmland purchases by foreign countries maybe be part of the CFIUS review process?
I love that. I absolutely think that's a great idea. I don't know if you've been taking calls from President Trump. I know he's very fond of you, John. I don't see why not. CFIUS doesn't fall under my mandate as Senior Director for Counterterrorism, but these are national security issues, from the grid to food security, all of them. So even if you haven't whispered in the president's ear, I may take that idea to him personally with your permission.
By all means, yeah. Thank you.
Doctor, let me ask you about this, because here's something else that comes up frequently. Where I live in Michigan, it's an agricultural state, and our concern is that these University of Michigan students that were caught at Camp Grayling photographing the Taiwanese American military exercises a few months ago, disguising themselves as journalists, and more recently, these Chinese students bringing in these pathogens, these fungus, in the United States from China. The concern is that there's no severe penalties. What about the penalties for these Chinese students? And what about anybody on this side, an American that helps them achieve their goals? We believe the penalties might need to be a lot more severe. What say you?
Well, look, my immediate boss, acting National Security Advisor, Secretary Marco Rubio, has recently, in a related issue, made me acting chair of the Federal Counter-Drone Task Force. And that's exactly what we're going to do there as well. Far too long, federal government has not taken seriously the threats that these actors, including drone operators, represent, and they often got away with a slap on the wrist or a misdemeanor. We've changed that with the June 6 EO the president has signed. So if you're a malefactor, if you're a malicious actor, whether you're bringing, deadly fungi into the United States, stealing samples of our blight-resistant agricultural crops, or flying drones close to sensitive sites, you're not going to get away with a fine or a misdemeanor slap on the wrist. We're going to use the full extent of the law against you, because these are all national security issues. You cross that line and we will come down on you like the hammers of hell, because you are endangering American citizens.
And a lot more straight ahead. We'll be right back.
Hey folks, if you're a homeowner like me, you need to listen to this. In today's AI and cyber world, scammers are stealing home titles and your equity is their target. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on one document, use a fake notary stamp, pay a small fee with your county, and boom, just like that, your home title has been transferred out of your name. And that's when the problems begin, because they start taking out loans using your equity and even sell your property. And you're not even going to find out it's happened until you get a collection or foreclosure notice months later. That's a nightmare, right? So when's the last time you checked on your home title? Well, if you're like me, the answer is never, right? You need to do something about that right now. That's why I've partnered with Home Title Lock, so you can find out today if you're already a victim. Use my promo code JTN at HometitleLock.com, and you'll get a free title history report and a free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes that might happen, and if fraud does happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. That's a good deal. Find out why I trust Home Title Lock. Go to HometitleLock.com and use the promo code JTN. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code JTN. Welcome back, America. We're going to continue on this special discussion about the threats of agro-terrorism and all that's being done in the last few months in Washington. I'm joined tonight, a special guest as my host, the one and only Steve Gruber. And now we're going to be joined by a member of the House Agriculture Committee who has really been on the front lines of advocating for farmers and particularly digging down on this issue. We heard from Brooke Rollins what the Trump administration did. You're going to be surprised how much Congress has gotten done in the last few weeks on this issue and the farmers in general. Joining us now from the great state of North Carolina, one of our favorite guests, Congressman Mark Harris. Congressman, good to have you back on the show.
John, it's great to be with you and with Steve as well. And thank you both for the work you're doing in getting this information out and on the forefront of what we're trying to do.
It's exciting. It's something that has been lingering as a concern for a long time, and it probably didn't get the attention needed. Now it's got attention on steroids, which is great. The big, beautiful bill did some pretty amazing things for agro-terrorism, biosafety in the Farm Bill. Because there's so much in it, it might have got lost. Tell us what you managed to get in there and what it does for the farmers and the food safety of this country.
Well, as you know, we recognize that we've got this serious issue that's going on with China that is almost issuing a sort of multi-front attack on America right under our noses. And we recognize that, and we recognize that we've got to do something. This administration, as we've said, Brooke Rollins has been really a champion in leading this. And even in that cabinet meeting a few weeks ago, when she was asked about the things that were front and center on her plate, she held up that map that showed the farmland that Chinese owned across our country and in many of our states. And so that certainly has called a great attention to the problem that we've got. But Congress has sought to respond. And I'm very excited that there were several things that were part of the One Big Beautiful Bill. One of them being the fact that it provides $1.5 billion over the next decade to livestock biosecurity. And I think this is extremely important to all of our farmers and to the whole food safety issue here in our country. So we're excited about that. We're also excited that the One Big Beautiful Bill invests $125 million per year for the Agriculture Research Facilities Act. And this is going to help our universities that focus on agriculture to be able to really have the latest and be able to lead the world when it comes to security, when it comes to innovation. We're going to be there leading at the forefront. And so Congress wants to respond. We want to get the right things where they need to be for our agriculture industry in this country and for our farmers. And this is leading edge stuff.
Huge. It sure is.
Of agricultural land in America, because it's not just agricultural land that is of concern, it's where they buy it in close proximity to military bases. I've seen a couple of states, South Dakota and Florida, come to mind where they have basically outlawed the idea that China and Chinese citizens can own land. Why can we not do that at the federal level, or can we do that? Can we get legislation passed, bipartisan legislation, to ban the ownership, maybe not just of China, but of other foreign countries? We can't go to China and buy land. I can't go to Mexico and buy land. Why do we allow that here?
Well, I agree with you, Steve. I think it's something we've got to take a long, hard look at and look at outlawing it. To your point, my home state of North Carolina has been looking at this issue. They've actually had a bill introduced that says that if you're within 75 miles of a military base in North Carolina, you cannot, China cannot own land around that base. I think that's important not only for China, but for any of our adversaries to not be able to own the land. And to your point, and I think this president understands it with his whole reciprocal pieces in his trade agreements, we can't go over to China and buy land. So why in the world should they be allowed to come in here and purchase it as well? So you raise a great point. I think there are issues that we've got to begin to look at and take action on because this is important for our security.
Yeah, there's no doubt. One of the things that we've highlighted over the last few months, Congressman, here at Just the News and Real America's Voice, is the large number of scientists that came from countries of concern, predominantly China, but also Iran, that were getting embedded in the NIH and the USDA. Since we started that reporting, NIH has looked at over 1,000 scientists, and they're doing extreme vetting, and they're going to start to pull the visas. Brooke Rollins announced on the top of the show she's already pulled the visas for 70 such contractors and scientists there at USDA. Is it something that Congress may need to put tighter rules on the NIH and these scientific organizations to make sure they don't let enemy scientists come into our country?
Oh, I think that would be a very wise move. And I think, frankly, when we continue to look at this whole immigration issue, there are more and more things just like that we've got to be pinpointing and taking the necessary steps and looking at it. There's so many different ways with legal immigration to come into this country, but we've got to be very careful with who is coming into our border. We saw that with the whole bioterrorism issue just recently with the folks coming in Michigan with the fungus that they were going to bring in, and how dangerous that was going to be to the agriculture industry. And there's certainly some history to that. From 1984 when there was an international salmonella contamination by just a religious group there in the Dulles, Oregon, that affected over 750 people. So I think when you see some of the things that have happened historically, it's something that we've got to keep in mind and be far more careful in who we're allowing into this country.
Yeah, I think we need to be leery of those college kids. I agree with that. I live in Michigan, so it hits close to home. I do want to ask you about something else, though, that I think is important when it comes to the food supply in America. That's the Chinese ownership of Smithfield, for example. That's one of the biggest packing plants in America. China today in America owns something like 25 or 30% of all the hogs alive in America today are actually Chinese owned because they're owned by Smithfield. So by extension, you have that. You also have Syngenta, one of the biggest seed producers in the world, owned by the Chinese. I see that would be a considerable risk worthy of consideration as well. What would you say?
Well, I think it certainly is something we consider. Now, we have Smithfield here in North Carolina. I've had the opportunity to go and tour their packing plant there and see what is done, a number of jobs there in Eastern North Carolina. But you certainly raise a great point, because we just went through a thing just a few years ago where the whole hog farm situation was being turned upside down here in North Carolina by big attorney firms that were coming in and creating havoc. But I think ownership of those companies that are part of our food supply is something that certainly is game and needs to be on the table. And we need to be having those conversations.
Sir, one of the ways that our farms can be made more resilient against this competition and sometimes very serious agro-terrorism threat is just making the farm economy more resilient. You did that a lot with the Big Beautiful Bill. There are just so many provisions in there, including a change in the inheritance tax that keeps farms in families for a long time. But the next big one coming up is going to be the Farm Bill. Tell us how important it is and what sort of momentum you may have to achieve some more stuff in that bill.
Well, John, you're exactly right. The Farm Bill is something that really should have been approved back in 2024. Congress was unable to get it passed. And so here we are facing it once again. The chairman of the Agriculture Committee, G.T. Thompson, has done a really good job, I think, in strategically planning how we are moving the Farm Bill forward. As part of the Big Beautiful Bill, while we had that opportunity in front of us to do reconciliation, we took care of a large part of the Farm Bill, not only dealing with SNAP, which oftentimes becomes a real sticking point when we're trying to do the things we need to do for our farms across this country. And by taking care of that in the One Big Beautiful Bill and reconciliation, we now are facing things that I think really do have momentum, really should have bipartisan support, so that we can make sure that we get what Chairman is calling kind of the skinny farm bill, or a 2.0, passed later this year. So I'm confident that we're going to be able to get there. We've been working hard over these last couple of weeks. We've been having hearings and getting ready for that. So I feel like there's a lot of momentum, and looking forward, hopefully, to seeing that get over the finish line for all of our farmers. They need to know that we're there. We need to know that support is there. But again, as part of the One Big Beautiful Bill, we took a big chunk, or a down payment, if you will, on finishing the Farm Bill before the end of the year.
It's most impressive, getting things done. Perhaps some of the most improvements in over a generation of American farm policy. Some pretty big stuff. Congressman, as always, we love having you on the show. Thanks for giving us such an important update. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We got another one, good one right around the corner. One of the best China experts this country has ever produced. Gordon Schenk will join us. I'll delve into more about what China's plans to replace the U.S. as the world's global food superpower are. We'll tell you what they really plan to do with us. That's next, right after these messages.
And welcome back, everyone, to this special edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm Steve Gura, co-hosting with my good friend John Solomon tonight. We are doing part 2 into our deep dive around agricultural terrorism and the concerns that they pose for us. As we've already discussed, we know China is behind a lot of the plots around hurting American agriculture. And we know why. Because it hurts America's food supply. What better way to make your adversary weaker than by making them hard to find food? It's a terrifying concern that could become a reality. Another terrifying reality is what would happen for the rest of the world if there was famine in America. Joining me now to discuss this is China expert and the author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America, Gordon G. Chang. You can find him on X at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon, nice to see you again. Thank you for spending time with us here tonight. Let's jump right into this. If America had a famine, because we've seen the Chinese and their tentacles reach into the agricultural sector, and one of their objectives would be to damage American agriculture. If that happened, if we lost 30% of our crop, half our crop, what would it mean, not just for us, but for the rest of the world?
This would be a shock that would reverberate everywhere. We have to just look at something which was small, which was the start of the war in Ukraine. That shocked agriculture around the world for two reasons. First of all, wheat prices tripled. And second of all, fertilizer prices increased as well because Ukraine produces urea, a main component for much of the world's fertilizer. So we saw what happened there. And the United States, which is a much bigger agricultural player, the effect would be so much greater. So we already have an example of what could happen, and we can just multiply that.
Yeah, great point. Gordon, I want to ask a little bit about what's happened since the last time we had a conversation about this. Obviously, 5 cabinet secretaries got together. They announced a pretty sweeping plan, everything from cybersecurity to farm land purchase reviews for foreigners. What's your assessment of that plan, what Trump rolled out, and where are the gaps where Congress and the administration still need to fill in to better fortify our food supply?
Well, first of all, it's really important for the federal government to realize this is an issue. So the National Farm Security Action Plan that Brooke Rollins announced was really important because it's getting people to think about these things. In terms of the gaps, I believe that no Chinese national should own farm or ranch land in the United States, whether it's near a military facility or not. And there are a lot of reasons for that. So far, the United States hasn't gone that far because we're talking about expropriation of land for sales. But that's something that I think that we absolutely need to do because we know of malign Chinese activities on farm and ranch land. And it doesn't take too much imagination to think what the Chinese could do when they give the go signal to their agents, their operatives, and their soldiers in their networks already in this country.
Wow.
Gordon, let me dive into this part of it because what we saw that really raised a red flag for a lot of us were University of Michigan students caught with pathogens with fungus in their possession coming back into the United States from China with the idea of exploring what these funguses could do. That's the concern. But my concern goes to cybersecurity. What about all these students? What about all these college students who are invested in Chinese agriculture and so forth? How easy are their computers hacked? We know China will steal intellectual property at will. They don't care. They'll do it. And if they could break into computers that have research in it, that's another weak point in the chain, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is. And we just saw this with the revelation that Microsoft was using engineers in China to work on Defense Department programs. And those engineers in China were basically unsupervised. They had what's called digital escorts, but those digital escorts really didn't know what the Chinese engineers were doing in many cases. You know, Microsoft software is used across the United States. Just a couple days ago, there were hacks on about 400 networks in our country, and including in the Department of Energy. This is Department of Energy. It's not just oil and gas wells. It's also nuclear weapons. And in fact, the agency inside the Department of Energy responsible for our nukes was in fact hacked. So clearly, you know, when you talk about agriculture, you talk about anything else. The Chinese basically have their run of our networks until we can eliminate these back doors that have been put in because we have been completely oblivious.
Yeah, that's the problem. Ignorance has been one of our greatest weaknesses, Gordon. One of the things we talked about earlier in the show with Seb Gorka, the counterterrorism director, is the idea that maybe long-term something like CFIUS being required to review any foreign land transaction, whether it's agriculture or near a military base. Is that a path to take? What are some of the ideas to make sure that these land purchases aren't part of a strategic non-kinetic war against us?
We know that the CFIUS process was broken. And we know that because, for instance, the Chinese food processor, Fang, was able to purchase land within 12 miles of Grand Forks Air Force Base, which is important because Grand Forks has satellite uplinks and also links to drones. And Grand Forks was not on a list of sensitive military bases that gave CFIUS jurisdiction. So they didn't have any jurisdiction over that really critical purchase. Now that is being remedied, but nonetheless, we need blanket rules.
Gordon G. Chang here with us. The urgency needs to be ramped up here. We need to take this very seriously. Gordon, thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Yeah, great to have you.
Well, thank you so much, guys.
All right. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, America, to this special edition of Just the News, No Noise. We've been diving deep for a second month now into the very serious issue of agro-terrorism and food safety. A lot has happened in the month since we began this conversation. A lot happened on this show today. I want to bring in my amazing co-host for the night, Steve Gruber, whose idea it was to do this collaboration. I'm so grateful for it. Steve, we heard from the Agriculture Secretary. We got a sense of what Congress was going to do, but I thought some big ideas came out in the conversation. The idea that maybe we treat farmland and farm technology like a special asset that has to be reviewed by CFIUS, maybe banning outright China's ability to buy farmland. There were some big ideas put on the table tonight.
There certainly were. I'll go back to Seb Gorka. The idea, and you said it, John, we need to vet these people. We need to vet the students that are coming in. University of Michigan, obviously, at the forefront with those students trying to bring in that fungus and potentially damage the food supply here because it could take out half the corn, wheat, beans, rice, and how devastating would that be, not just here, but around the world. And I think that's incredibly important. And you point out those 1,000 scientists floating around that are Chinese nationals, Chinese citizens of places like the National Institutes of Health. And I say, what are we thinking? We now know that China had access to computer systems in America dating back many years now by way of Bill Gates and Microsoft having access. And you just have to wonder, China has no qualms about stealing intellectual property. They have no qualms about taking what they learn here. And if they went back to China and made crops that were resistant to fungus or other pathogens, and then let those pathogens go here in America or in Argentina or Ukraine or some of the other places that produce tremendous amounts of food in this world, I mean, the effects could be devastating. So I really like what you and Seb Gorka were talking about. Let's vet these people. We can't just let them come in, oh, I'm a student. We need to do better. We need to do better.
Yeah, we do. And I think there's a down payment now on a real strategy that Brooke Rollins and the other cabinet secretaries, Kristi Noem and Pam Bondi and Pete Hegseth unveiled early this month, about a couple weeks after our special, but much more still needs to be done. One area that I wasn't thinking about until today was the vulnerability of our farming industry to hackers and cybersecurity. Our farming industry is becoming automated. AI is going to make it even more automated, whether it's automated dairy machines or automated tractors in the field. They're vulnerable just like all of our other connected devices in the world. Brooke Rollins really seemed to have her finger on that pulse and making sure that we get ahead of that before that becomes a crisis.
Well, I've had the privilege, John. I don't know the last time you were in the cab of a big John Deere tractor. And first of all, they're as big as a battleship. Some of these tractors, they're gigantic. And they can plug in everything. You've got your geo-tracking systems, you got your AI. You can do these giant fields in Illinois and Iowa and all over this country. And basically, you're there as it's completely automated. The machine's moving, and yes, there's a human being in it. But because of that, it's connected to satellites. It's connected to the cloud. It's connected to all these computer systems. And if the Chinese or anybody else can figure out, well, they're planting this at this rate with this seed, and some of these seeds, as I mentioned, Syngenta providing the seed, there's a lot of place in there for some monkey business, for lack of a better term, where they could play with how we plant things, how we don't plant things, what fertilizer gets used, what seeds get used, and they can all get and extract this information. And that high-tech system, we love it, it helps us, but it also has some vulnerabilities, clearly.
It seemed like today we got a good sense that Congress isn't sure what it's going to do yet. We got to get a better focus on it. Where do you think Congress goes? It's a really important piece of legislation. Normally it was automatic. Last year we whiffed on it.
Well, we've had some good years and bad years for the farm bill. Debbie Stabenow, the former senator of my state, usually was at the forefront there. She's retired, of course. I just hope we can, and excuse me for this, I hope we can plant the seeds for security in our agricultural sector going forward. It's important. It feeds the world, not just America, but the world. We have to be sensitive to that. We have to be mindful of that. We have to keep our eye on the ball, even with all these other things going on. And boy, it's been a busy news cycle, but nothing more important than the food supply of this country for us and for everybody else.
All right, folks, that'll wrap up our special conversation today about agro-terrorism and food security. We'll have the weekend. We'll be back on Monday for regular programming.